Hey, church, this month's book recommendation is The Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness, The Path to True Christian Joy by the late pastor Timothy Keller. This book actually originated as a sermon that Tim Keller preached, and I'm sure you can find the sermon audio online as well. But it was made into a book, and it's just a little over 40 pages, so very accessible. Keller opens the book by noting how our culture places a high value on self-esteem. That due to the influence of the modern psychology movement, we tend to view a lot of problems in society or a lot of problems with individuals in society as owing to a lack of self-esteem, a lack of self-worth. In other words, our ego needs to be catered to. The problem with this, Keller argues, is that it creates a preoccupation with performance and acceptance from others, or even acceptance of ourselves. But Keller argues that this preoccupation with the self only leads to anxiety, insecurity, and a sense of inadequacy. We find ourselves under the tyranny of the ego, dictated and ruled by this concern over self. And that can show up in more than one way. Of course, it can show up as pride and self-assertion. That leaves us teetering on always needing to keep up the performance to be seen and affirmed by others, as well as prove our worth to ourselves. But it can show up in other ways as well. Oftentimes, when someone is really down on themselves and views themselves very negatively, we tend to think that they have a low self-esteem. But Keller argues that this is actually due to self-concern as well. Being so concerned with themselves and how other people view them or how they view themselves that they're ruined by not meeting their standards. Yes, we can often feel puffed up when we feel that we have performed and we are recognized by others, and that's due to a high sense of self and a concern for self. But when we despair and view ourselves negatively, that too, Keller says, is ultimately because we are concerned with ourselves. We are concerned with our failure to perform or our failure to be recognized by others. And so in both cases, Keller argues that the freedom from this tyranny of self-concern is the freedom of self-forgetfulness that is found in the gospel. Keller takes us to 1 Corinthians chapter 4, where Paul tells the Corinthians that it is a very light matter for him to be judged by them. In fact, he doesn't even judge himself. What ultimately matters is not his own self-concern with how they view him or how he views himself, but ultimately, he says, what matters is how the Lord judges him, how the Lord sees him. And so Keller emphasizes that the key to freedom and true Christian joy lies in a proper perspective of ourselves. Freedom comes when we stop being preoccupied with ourselves, our own achievements, our own reputation. Instead, Keller says that as believers through faith in Christ, we have been given a new identity. Believers are now in Christ, united to Christ. And as such, our worth and significance is now to be found in our relationship with God through Christ. We are loved by God and accepted by God in Jesus Christ, and this provides us our ultimate sense of validation and worth, above and beyond and even regardless of what others think of us and what we think of us. And this new understanding enables Christians to find true contentment regardless of worldly achievements or what others think of them. The result of this freedom from self-concern, this self-forgetfulness, is humility. And as Keller explains, humility is not so much thinking less of oneself, but thinking of oneself less. In short, Keller argues that freedom, contentment, and peace are found by shifting the focus away from ourselves and our egos and embracing the gospel message of who we are in Christ and the ultimate validation we have from God in Him. The gospel, among other things, in other words, frees us from obsessing over ourselves, our successes, our failures, our performance, achievement, reputation, and recognition from others. So again, that book is The Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness by Tim Keller. I recommend picking up a copy and maybe find someone in the church who's interested in reading along with you.